This is Tweet Street Satirical Saltire, broadcasting to you for unoccupied Scotland. Amplifying women's voices and saying women won't waste. This is Tweet Street Satirical Saltire, broadcasting to you for unoccupied Scotland. Amplifying women's voices and saying women won't waste. Welcome to Tweet Street Scotland Occupied, or Tweet Street Occupied Scotland, everyone. I'm Cinnamon Bridges, aka Peter. With us this afternoon, we've got a wee change to start with because we don't have our co-host John, JB Whitesnake, with us at the minute. He may be joining us later on. And we're here with our guest who has kindly joined us from a rooftop in France. And it's Big Andy McColl. So I'll just say hi first of all to Big Andy McColl. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm good, Peter. How are you?
I'm good, thanks very much.
Before we start, I should apologise for this squeaky effing chair I'm sitting on. I've tried to find the Allen key for it, tighten up, but I've not found it. So if it squeaks and gets annoying, I can only apologise.
That's we'll try and make do with what we've got, Andy, as we always do here at Tweet Street. Right. So also wanted to say it was your birthday yesterday. So happy birthday yesterday. Did you enjoy yourself? Did you do anything that would be of interest to us?
Probably not of interest, but I had a great day actually. It was 24 degrees in the shade and 27 in the sun. I was on a golf course all day. Met my buddies, two Dutch guys actually. Played golf with them from 10 o'clock till about 4:30. Then started drinking the rosé. Got back here, saw my local pals in lecture, and I won't say got on the piss, but I had a nice wee quiet drink with them. So what a perfect day.
Sounds good, mate. So you went out with a couple of Dutchmen and get your hole. Right, brilliant. So
yeah, I probably the last, so I can't complain.
Well done. Right, so moving on for that, right? We know that you're in France, right? Whereabouts in France? Sorry, tell us a wee bit about where you're, Andy. Why you're in France and what you do while you're there, mate.
Oh, crikey, right. Well, first of all, I live in a place, a wee town called Lecture. The region I live in is called the Gers, right? Gers, which is obviously funny for us for two reasons. Because we've got the Glasgow Rangers, that's their nickname, and we've got the Gers Figures.
Aye.
So I'm a Celtic man, so it's a bit of a pain in the arse living in the Gers. I've had been that pissed about me by many people back in Scotland for a while. I ended up down here. It's a long story. There's a woman involved. She's not here anymore, but that's why I first came down here. I first came out to France in 1998 as a tourist, and then I came out here with this girl, 18 years ago, and I've got bitten by the bug because life is pretty good here if you can make it work. And I'm currently making it work. I've just started working for the town, which I'm very proud of, because it makes me feel part of something here, you know. But my main job is actually, I bet on rugby matches, would you believe? That's what I spend my time doing. That's why my weekends are always, most people are enjoying themselves on Saturday if you're not working. I'm sitting in front of the telly watching 8 or 9 rugby games in a row.
Right, okay. Now, that's piqued a wee bit of interest. So, tell us a wee bit more about that without bankrupting yourself and without boring us to death about your not necessarily your strategy, but how did you get involved in that and how does it make a living for you, if you don't mind?
By chance, I received an email from William Hill about 20 years ago saying, "Oh, Mr. McColl, I've not seen you for a while. Here's a £50 free bet." There happened to be a rugby game coming up that weekend, Scotland against South Africa. And I thought, Scotland could win this. Actually, more like 15 years ago. I thought, Scotland could win this, but they'll win it by maybe 1 to 5 points. So put the 50 quid on and it came in. It came in at 20 to 1 or something like that, right? So I took my girl at the time out for a weekend, went away for a couple of days, and then I banked the other half. And I thought, okay, I'm going to bank this 500 quid and see if I can bet and make it work. And gradually it's evolved into what I do now. I bet on the spreads. It's actually investing, really, because what you do is when a game is being played, you choose the moment to get in and the moment to get out. So you've got to be watching the game. It's not to put the bet on before the game. Like the French, for example, that's all they do here. They bet on football and stuff like that, but they put the bet on before the game, and then if it wins, it wins. Doesn't it? Whereas I bet what's called in running. And so I've got to be watching the game at the time to make the right decision. And I win over the piece. It's not a fortune, but I win over the piece. And between that and working for the town, it's enough to earn me a crust.
Excellent, mate. It's really good. I mean, obviously, we follow each other on Twitter, And I see some of the posts that you put out, and I agree with a lot of the things that you say. We've got kind of a common interest with certain things.
A lot of.
Sorry?
Maybe a lot of. Not everything.
Well, again, that's how it peaks. You know, it's you see a lot of things with people, then you start. Oh well, hold on. I'm agreeing with almost everything that this person says in the respect. The difference that we've got is it's not a difference actually. It's football and rugby. Now, you seem to, I don't know, obviously because you bet on it. You seem to talk about a lot of things. You seem to highlight as in a rugby fashion. I see with a lot of your pictures, you've got the rugby shirt on. Now, wee bit about the old alliance and France. Give us a wee bit of a secret, because we've kind of put you as ambassador, in France. So give some secrets for France that will either amuse us or pique our interest.
Well, you might say you count me as your ambassador, but I'm not Catherine Colonna, right? Let's not go there. I'm not that close to any Scottish politicians. I tell you what's interesting. The French, first of all, they don't understand. They just don't understand the whole United Kingdom thing, or the dis-UK, as I now call it, because we're not anymore a United Kingdom. We're dis-United Kingdom. Sadly, we are still officially a kingdom. What can you do? They don't understand.
Shame, isn't it?
Yeah, because down here in the southwest, it's very much a rugby stronghold. So they've watched the Five Nations, Six Nations rugby for years, decades, and they understand Scotland as a culture, as a country. They respect it. They don't understand why we're still allied to the English, and they even understand even less about Ireland, my God, and Wales. I'll give you a story. A friend of mine was at a funeral a few years ago. French guy, old French guy who died, friend of the family, whatever. And he turned up to the funeral. And as they lowered the boy's coffin into the grave, they started playing on tape Flower of Scotland. Because the old boy who died, was a big rugby fan, and he found the Flower of Scotland the most affecting national anthem. And that's very common here. Right. The French, I speak to Frenchies the other day, and they prefer Flower of Scotland to their anthem, the Marseillaise. So
they are. I completely prefer it. It's just because I can't speak French right enough. You know what I mean? So
first thing I did before I came was to learn the words of the Marseillaise, so I can sing them both. And often I'm down there, if we're playing them in the Six Nations, I'll wear my kilt. I'm down there, I stand up for both anthems.
See, that's the difference that I see between Scottish people and English people, really. When we go somewhere, we try and learn a wee bit about the place, whether it be the language, whether it be, like you say, you're involved with the town, like communities and things like that. And I don't know, maybe I've got this idealistic view of Scotland, but I see that as like how we could be being independent.
Yes, totally.
Now, we're going to talk a wee bit about you've got something in the pipeline over the course of the next fortnight or so that you're going to be doing, and you're putting you're channeling your energies toward. And it's in relation to the Alba Party. Is that correct, Andy?
Yep. Like most Alba Party members, I'm a member of the Alba Party, and like most Alba Party members, I was SNP for long enough. Okay. But obviously, as people used to say about Labour Party, I didn't leave Labour, Labour left me. And it's very much like that with the SNP. So I've got involved. I was at the conference. I came back to Scotland for the conference, whatever it was, 5-6 weeks ago in McGreenock. Met a lot of people who I'd only met on Twitter before, so that was fantastic, and got really enthused. And I'm a member of the international branch, which, by the way, they never had in the SNP. In the SNP, living here, I could only be a member of the Paris branch. Right. Now, I'm 10 hours from Paris. Doesn't help me. There's nothing I can do down from here. But Alba has got an international branch. So, for example, I was at the Alba International Branch meeting a few weeks ago, and there was only maybe a dozen of us in that particular meeting because it's difficult to handle. I think we got something like 600-700 members, and having that many on a Zoom meeting is not going to work, obviously. So the boy that was running the meeting, who lives in Holland, there was about 10 of us there. There was one guy from America, a girl from Switzerland, a girl from Austria, me from France, another guy from France, a bloke from Australia. So how you pick the right time for that is, I don't know how it works, but Raymond, who was running the meeting, did a good job, and it's great that we can all get connected and get involved and actually do something for Scottish independence. For years, I was SNP member here, but I could do hee-haw from here. So when I was back in Scotland, I could get involved. Whereas I can actually now with Alba get involved from here. So to answer your question, we're having a re-GM in a couple of weeks, the 31st of December, and I'm going to throw my hat in the ring for secretary.
Excellent, mate. Excellent. So tell me what that would involve then, being the international secretary for the Alba party then.
I don't actually know, Peter. No. Luckily, my wee sister is the secretary for the Lacu branch in Aberdeen. Right, and I've got good friends in another secretary somewhere else in Scotland. So between them, I think we can form a cabal. We get to know how we, because we're all finding your feet. Alba's just obviously new on the block. We're all finding your feet, how things going to work, technology, how you get in touch with people, how you can fundraise, what we can do from here, for example. And obviously, we kind of chap doors, but we can get involved in social media or organising things or fundraising, or we can throw our tuppence in the ring in various ways. We'll find out, obviously, in due course.
Well, see, for me, it kind of it shows ambition. It's a case of right. We are a relatively new party. We're setting up. We're looking not inwardly to Scotland. We're looking internationally. We're looking to kind of this is what we as a party, our intention is, which excites me. It really does. And I mean, if I look back a year ago, 8 months, a year ago, ISP, the party, were coming out and they were doing not similar, but again, they had their own. They've got their own path that they're looking to follow, and they seem to get the same sort of treatment from existing SNP members. It's just what the Alba members are getting, or what we're getting. I think it's toning down a wee bit, which I'm pleased to say. I'm seeing kind of I'm seeing that wee bit of realisation for people going, right, well, it doesn't make any difference that they're blue independent supporters or yellow independent supporters for Alba or SNP, or if they're green, white and blue for ISP. We're pushing in the same direction. It's been hard to get noticing that, but I'm starting to notice a wee change, which is pleasing, Andy.
That's good to know. Yeah, but I'm pleased. I've not been on Twitter much for the past 3 or 4 days for lots of reasons, but if you're seeing that, that's obviously a positive thing.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, we've eventually got to come through because, and you see people saying this, right? And it must be hard if you are a complete now Alba diehard or a complete now SNP diehard for one reason or another, right? It must be harder to oversee that. I've always been independent. I've never been SNP. I've never been Alba. I've never been ISP. I champion anybody that's pushing for independence. That's how it goes, Andy, right? So for me, it's easier to kind of get excited when I see it. It doesn't matter who it's coming from. There was one of the SNP guys that I seen in a speech last night, and I'll probably cut this video through in the edit, Andy, because it was a really good, positive speech that he was making, and it was just being factual about global Britain.
You look at global Britain and you strip away the slogan. The reality is that Britain's foreign policy is one of the key drivers behind Scottish independence. It's one of the key reasons why I believe Scotland can do things differently. Because when I look at Britain's foreign policy, what I see is the Iraq war. What I see is the UK government providing weapons to the Saudis to bomb the people of Yemen. I see Brexit. I see the hostility towards the European Union that's came with that. I see the dehumanisation of refugees, the demonisation of migrants. I see cutting international aid budgets. I see the chaos of the departure from Afghanistan. I see nuclear weapons off the coast of Scotland that should not be there. That's the reality of global Britain, and it's quite frankly not something that I want to be part of. And I think those of my generation and below are quite sick, fed up of it, which is why when you look at the opinion polls, young people in Scotland don't want to be part of the United Kingdom.
And the Internal Markets Act and Brexit and the treatment of just basically all the people that fisheries, farmers, and I think when you push facts and it makes your stand stronger. And I hadn't seen anybody doing that for the SNP. I'd seen a lot of, like, when Alba come onto the scene, I seen that it was the urgency to let people know that, well, independences were raison d'etre, which was supposed to be the same for SNP, which seems to have shifted over the years. More's the pity for independence fans.
Sorry, in fact, that used to be the first sentence in the SNP constitution. And they changed it in 2015, I think.
Aye, I mean, it's sad, Andy. I find that, like, being an independent supporter and not having a party affiliation, I find it really, really angering that some people can't see past their own party and see what's actually in front of them. Because for me, and a lot of people say this, you would have the Unionists, the Tories thinking, what plan can we make to stop independence from happening? How can we prevent that, right? And you would have all the 77th Brigade, as the term goes, right? What can we do? Well, no, it seems to be that we can put men in dresses, just go up there and agitate, and independent support will wane because people are, well, they're distancing themselves for that. You've got the leader of what was supposed to be the Party of Independence with time on our side that nobody else seems to have. And it's angering, Andy, and it makes me kind of right, well, hold on, you're not doing what you're doing. I will then highlight the things that you're doing that you shouldn't be doing, and I'll champion the things that other parties are doing that are exciting. So, at
the same time, I totally agree with what you're saying. At the same time, over the past few years, under Sturgeon, the SNP has got further and further right wing.
Yeah.
You know, they're going to create a national energy agency. They were going to create all the things they were going to say they were going to do, they've not delivered on and shown no intention of delivering on. So it's become easier to be against the SNP as a kind of elephant in the room, and realise that, okay, you mentioned the ISP, there's people who prefer Scotia Future because of their take on the European Union, which I don't agree with, but some people will, and of course the Alba Party. And I think the SNP, when somebody in 10 years' time, when some student in 10 years' time, after we've been independent for maybe 7 or 8 years, when some young lad or woman writes some doctorate at some university about how does Scotland become independent, the SNP will be a footnote. I really believe that. The SNP will not be the party that's going to crash us through the door. They were always useful for a while. We all joined. We're all full of joys of spring. We still got many people in the party who are very, very good, proper independent foot soldiers, but they don't quite realise yet the SNP are not going to get us there under the current guise. So we have to do something else. And Alba is okay. You mentioned the ISP, and I was a soft supporter of the ISP because that was before Alba came along. I was looking for anything that would get us over the line, and Alba would maybe, or ISP would maybe be it, starting with a very, very tiny acorn, obviously. But now Alba's going into something interesting. When you mentioned about you've noticed people in the SNP are getting a bit less antithetical to Alba now. I was talking to someone the other day. It's currently with the SNP, especially the official party of the SNP, it's almost like the Bain principle. If you remember the Bain principle under Scottish Labour, that was the principle. You could never do anything at all, any deals, any support with the SNP. You just couldn't, because that would help them get to power, etc., and give them legitimacy. And the SNP are getting like that, or have been like that with Alba.
Aye, I mean, it's hard. It's hard to watch as an independent supporter. It's hard to watch, and our absent co-host JB and I have spoke offline about this. Because we don't agree on everything, right? We don't agree on absolutely everything. We've got different kind of things that but what we try and do is we try and push the positives for both our sides to kind of meet in the middle, because that's ultimately where we need to be. We're independent supporters, and I guess what as you say, what you see is we're no one to share this. So the thing that sticks in the back of my throat that I really don't like is the fact that there was unionist MPs given seats in the Scottish Parliament over independent supporting MPs or potential independent supporting MPs, and that stings me, Andy. It really does. Like, it grates with me, because anybody that knew the voting system knew that this would happen, and you can never give ourselves the best chance. Why not?
When you say anybody who knows the voting system, that's the one thing that really genuinely disappointed me last election. I genuinely did not realise that so many independence-minded people in Scotland were so stupid, literally ignorant of how the voting system worked, that they did not do that. Because even the unionists were talking about Alba were trying to game the system, and they were kind of right, because that's what the system drove you. Peace supporters just didn't see it at all. And I thought, because we tried, Matt, we all tried so many times to educate them and say, listen, this is how the system works. If you don't think about it, you're in danger of electing, par hasard, as they say in France, a lot of unionist MSPs. And they just didn't listen, didn't get it.
And that's, I mean, I would take the word stupid out of that, Andy, because sometimes I think it's maybe been conned. I think a lot of them, because to be fair, until I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago, politics was and it's not something that I enjoy actually looking into. It's something that I feel that I need to look into now, because it gets ignored, and that's what happens with a lot of people. So to take the word stupid, it's maybe been kind of a case of being ignorant and listening to people that you are influenced by, that you think are doing the right thing. So you get conned a wee bit. And like, if you look at the background, the Egypt that's kind of currently at my shoulder here, we know, Scottish people know, that he's talking shite. Everything that he says is shite, and it's just a lie that's not happened yet, right? In some cases,
he's a perfect example, actually, of why a lot of us have always been independence-minded for years and years and years. We understand. I know folks say, oh, blood and soul, nationalism and Scottish exceptionalism. It's not about either of those things. But I know, I've lived in England for a long time. I've lived in France for a long time, but I've lived in England for on and off 20 years. I've got many English pals, of course. You have, well, we've all been there, we've been around. Obviously, I'm born, bred Scot. So I lived in Scotland until I was nearly 40-year-old. I understand that there's a difference between Scottish people and English people. And the Tories, and him in particular, is a perfect example of this. There's very, very, very few people, even Scottish Tories, who've got any time for the guy. They know he's toxic, he's a bumbling fool. But the more the Scottish people see him as a bumbling fool, the more English people see him as some kind of cross between Benny Hill and Margaret Thatcher. And the more bumbling he does, the more they take him to their breast. It's something I can't understand, and Scottish people don't all understand. There's a basic fundamental difference in how we see the world.
Aye, totally. I mean, that's the painful thing. I think the thing that kind of it certainly annoys me, right? It really annoys me hearing some of the things, or knowing some of the things that he said about Dunblane, knowing the things that he said about Scottish people in general, and his English nationalist approach to Britain. It annoys me that we're still attached to that, and we've got a leader who had the potential to have greatness, and I think everybody was brought in with that to an extent.
Totally.
And then there was something changed for everybody. Something changed. Like, there was certain things that's not always been the same thing that's changed for everybody. Yep. I was very early on, I must admit, although I kept my powder dry, which I probably shouldn't have done. But I kind of promised somebody that, well, what I'll do, because it could harm the push for independence, is I'll keep my powder dry until it's the point where we're at a safe point where we should be able to say, well, no, this is something that's concerning. And we're at that stage now. We're at that stage now. So at the end of the day, you've got to look at the foxes in the hen house. And
I think, yeah, I mean, I'm like you say, independence is the only thing that matters to me. I've had conversations with many people in the past, a good pal Jason, etc. Talk about, okay, having independence is fine, but you've got to have independence for a reason. And of course, he's right. There's got to be something which drives you for independence. But between now and when we become independent, we can actually decide which direction we'll go in. Do you want to join the European Union? Do you want to join EFTA? Do you want to have a monarchy? All these things, we've got time to decide once we vote independence, okay, what direction are we going, what kind of new Scotland are we going to create? You don't have to have that as a driving force. But what you have to realise is we're not like those people down there. We don't see the world the same way as they do. And I mean, in the 2014 referendum, I worked quite heavily for Rise. Now, who are Rise now? In fact, who are the SSP? Right, but for me, like you say, it's all about independence first, and then during that process, we'll decide which country we want to be. But you've got to be independent first and foremost. Everything else is second.
I mean, independence for me is normal. I think I can safely say it's the same for John in his absence. It's the same for John when he's here. Well, no, when he's here, same for John, period. Independence is normal. To have anything else, what it does is it gives us the opportunity to do whatever the country decides to do, and no whatever unelected peers and everybody else decide for us. And if you have a look at, I was saying to you, because I've kind of hearing on the grapevine that the French may be talking about a possible blockade if there's issues with the Egypt and his oven-ready Brexit deal with the Northern Ireland situation. No, there was whispers of that. No, again, and this is me, like, taking it to the extreme, right, and having a laugh with it into the bargain, Andy. So for me, the Empire seem to think that they're in this power, that this position. The perfidious Albions seem to think that they've got this power over everybody, Andy, right? But they leave themselves in a really vulnerable position, for me, right? And here's the reason why. Because you've got Ireland that could unify, right? You've got the issue with the French. If the French blockade and they continue to nullify Scotland and Wales to the extent that they're nullifying Wales, they could end up suffocating themselves for the rest of the world. You know, with reneging on some of the deals that they're doing and get that pariah state, you know, and it's like a very dangerous place that they could end up. And by not being independent, being a part of this sham union, we could suffer the consequences of the sins of the neighbour, so to speak. And I mean, how does it, from France, how do you guys see, like, Scottish politics? Do you know about the things that are happening with regards to the GRA, and is that something that's known in France, or is it just because you know Scottish politics, you know about that?
It's because I know the French. Mostly don't care, but the French don't get anything they get about the Disc UK is through the mainstream media. So it's London centric basically. There's, for example, there's a French TV channel called France 24, France 24, where they broadcast in English, they broadcast in French, and different presenters obviously, but it'll be the same stream and the same editorial process. And they're basically giving you the line from London. They'll have little colour stories from here, there, and I mean, COP26, I imagine, will get covered, and maybe they'll mention it in terms of Scottish independence, maybe. But that's a bit of a niche. The mainstream, France 24 is not watched by many people in France, but the mainstream, the kind of BBC One and ITV that they watch in France, never cover Scotland. Never. Aye. They don't know who Scotland is. They don't even know who Alex.
Sorry?
They don't even know who Alex Salmond is.
No, that's a bit like,
yeah, I know.
That's a shocker. That's a shocker. No, right. Well, here, let's talk about this then, right? As soon as you've mentioned Alex Salmond, right? Let's talk about this, because this was something that pissed me off, right? And it probably pissed a lot of people off. You're saying that, like, they've not heard of Alex Salmond in France, but the SNP were trying to erase Alex Salmond and everything that he'd done leading up to under F1. And like, I think the attacks on the man have been like OTT. I don't know how he's had the restraint to handle it the way that he has. What's your thoughts on that? Seeing as you're saying that you've not heard or they don't hear about things like that.
I totally, well, as I said to the two boys I played golf with yesterday, two Dutch boys, I said, look, I'm looking forward to this today, playing golf on birthday with you guys, but not as much as next year on my 60th birthday. I'm hoping to play golf with Alex, because my wee sister is a fundraising thing for the Alba party, and 3 months ago bought a 4-ball up at a golf course up near her. She lives up near Peterhead, where Alex lives. And so she said to him, listen, I've only got one golfer in my family. My brother lives in France. So he kind of come, can you play with him? Aye, okay. So it's kind of penciled in. I'm playing golf with Alex on my 60th birthday next year. We'll see how that happens.
Right, well, we'll put a shout out for you, because might as well do this now, because we're trying to get a wee date with Alex for Christmas as well. Get a wee Christmas message out. And sorry, Andy?
My wee sister's on the case. She's spoken to him already.
Oh, no, that's good to hear, because we've obviously, I'm putting out retweets and things like that, and our subscribers, our followers, it's gaining interest. It really is gaining interest. But there have been some suggestions, and we've ran with it. We've had a wee bit of a laugh. We're going to do a Christmas panto, and he's got to feature his widow Twanky and things like that. You know, just Twitter chat, right? So anybody that's watching this, that's just all a laugh, right? Alex, we're not expecting you to end like that. If you come on, it's just a genuine interview like this. No, I wanted to talk about. Right, I wanted to talk about this guy that we've got in the picture in the background, and we'll come back to this. We were speaking about right. Craig Murray.
Yeah.
Is there news of the situation with Craig Murray in France?
I think it won't be mainstream. I'm sure it'll be buried away on page 12 of the Le Monde or something like that. But again, it's not something that they'll get. The problem with France is an imperial nation like England is. They've had their own empire. They've dealt with it better than the English have, obviously, but they've still got that kind of mindset. And so they look to Royaume-Uni, the United Kingdom, as an empire in its own right. And that's really London. So anything happens away from London just doesn't get covered here. It's a bit like, you know, in Spain, or Catalan thing. Spain's Madrid. The Spain, Catalonia obviously has got some powers of its own right, but Spain is basically Madrid. France is basically Paris, and the UK is seen as basically London. So things like what's happening with Craig Murray are just not cited here, sadly. I try to educate people, but they're not interested. They see it as a small issue in a small country. I mean, there's a very Welsh culture, totally, but Scottish politics they know almost nothing about.
It's a shame. I mean, and again, I think, like, no blowing our own trumpet here, but I think being an independent nation, a lot more of this information is absorbed internationally, and that links back into Alba doing try to have an international branch, international secretary. Good luck for that, by the way, because I didn't say that when you tell us, but good luck in your running for that, mate. Sincerely. But that links into that, you know. Try to have an international branch to kind of get the good news about Scotland. And by the way, there is a lot of good news about Scotland, and you just don't hear. You don't hear a lot about it because it's smothered by the Imperial Masters, and it's all Scotland bad. Welcome back to Tweet Street Scotland Occupied. Tweet Street Occupied Scotland, everyone. With me this afternoon is Big Andy McColl. Right, big man. Right, so we've got a few things that we're going to be chatting about. I'd ask you about how it's viewed for France, the politics in Scotland, etc. Scotland in general. So, give us a wee bit about it.
Well, there's an interesting thing happening right now. There'll be a third referendum this December, I think it is, in New Caledonia, which is an island east of Australia, but it's the French overseas territory. Okay. Population of less than 1 million people, about 270,000 people. And they've already voted twice for independence in recent years. Now, in 2018, they voted 43% for independence. In 2020, they voted 47% for independence. And there's going to be a third and final run at this year in December. And it's really on a knife edge. Right. Interesting, the French people I know here are totally against it, in the same way that they're against Catalonian independence and Basque independence and Corsican independence, because they see themselves as French first. They've got that colonial mindset. They're French first and everything else second. But they're totally behind Scottish independence. So New Caledonia, Nouvelle Caledonie. I'm from Old Caledonia, Ancient Caledonie. And they're totally behind Scottish independence because they see Scotland as a state that's existed for a long time. You know, they had alliances that started in 1295. So they see Scotland as a country by right in a way that they don't see, for example, New Caledonia and Catalonia and even Corsica. So that's a bit of historical perspective there, because they've got their own little bit of things going on. They've got the Alsace people and even some Occitan people who are kind of my region, and people in the Basque country. They kind of agitate for independence a little bit, not seriously, but a little bit going on. But the French in general will take no truck with that whatsoever. But they're totally behind Scottish independence. It's the ones I've spoken to are.
I mean, it's like the news that Scottish people don't get is that Scotland is viewed very highly round about the globe. And I can remember a time, like, this is totally digressing, right? It just backs up what I'm saying about round about the globe. I was in Egypt, Andy, and
yep.
I decided to go on like a quad bike ride, a wee quad bike tour thing. And I goes away on this tour, and there was nobody else from my hotel was doing it. It was just myself, right? There was folk from other hotels, but it was just myself. I was the only one from my hotel. So I was kind of a wee bit of a loner at that to start with, going in there like it's just myself, nobody with us, nobody to talk to, and didn't last very long, obviously, right? I'm quite a outgoing person, so we went on a wee jaunt, and they took us into the desert in Egypt to some Bedouin monks, to have tea with Bedouin monks,
right?
And I hadn't noticed, because we were on bikes and you could hear like voices, but I hadn't noticed that I was the only Scot there, right? You had a couple of English people there, there was one Welsh couple there, and there were some Germans and other nationalities there, right? But I was the only Scot. So we goes away and we're having tea and that, you know, and we're just like conversing and that. Like, I had obviously laughed at one point and said something. I can't even remember what it was. It was totally irrelevant. But the wee monk guy, he kind of a Rabbi Burns, you know, and I'm like, huh? You know, and he says about Rabbi Burns, and then spoke to the tour guide that was with him in Egyptian, whatever the language is, Arabic. And then they said to me about Rabbi Burns from Scotland, what have you, and I was like, I was kind of a nonplussed by this, right? And I came back home, and I was having a conversation with my dad like years later, and I told him that story, and my dad was like, "What, in Egypt? Like in the desert in Egypt, you know?" And like, absolutely fat. And he says, "That's a big thing." He says, "You know how?" And I'm like, "Aye." You start to realise as you get older, and when you start taking like, don't listen to the news you're getting fed in your living room daily here, because that's what they want you to believe. Like, look for the news. Have a wee look. Scotland are well regarded.
I think there's a wee fact about Burns, which is, I think I could be right about this for a change. That Burns, apart from gods, Jesus and Buddha and stuff like that, he is the most represented human man, best kind, globally in statues.
Well, there you go.
There's more statues of Burns than anyone who lived male.
Right, well, there you go. That's fascinating facts for Big Andy McColl there, all the way from France. Bang!
I'm trying to zoom in on this, Peter. You'll have to edit this out, but I'm too far away, so we'll try and zoom in on this, because I zoomed in before so you can see me a bit better and do my fucking...
Let's see if we can get both of your nipples on the screen at once.
Well, that's what I'm trying to avoid, mate.
Don't worry, mate. I'll put a wee set of nipple covers on you or something like that in the edit.
Come on now. I tell you, by the way, in that wee break we had there,
aye,
you won't believe it, Roddy McLeod phoned me.
Did he?
Aye.
Here you go, wee exclusive. Are we exclusive? Right, I'll wait till you're settled and then you can tell us about this
I
exclusive.
can't zoom it in. Maybe like this.
Don't worry, right? You're still beautiful, mate. Right, go. Why, Aaron? What was the exclusive here, mate? We're getting for Roddy.
No, he just phoned and said, "How you doing? I've not spoken to you for a while." I said, "Listen, I'm halfway through talking to Peter and the Sweet Street Boys." He said, "All right, phone me back." So obviously, I've not spoken to him for a couple of weeks since he's been in hospital now. So just to chew the fat, I imagine.
Well, it was good to see him back. Seen the Prism. Did you watch the Prism? Have you seen the Prism for Sunday? The weekend? Excellent. The lads were excellent, and it's no just Roddy. It's Ian. It's Gareth. It's Alf. All of them were absolutely excellent. It was a great show. Thanks very much for putting it together, lads. By the way, I appreciate that. So that's good, right? That's again a digression, right? Back to you.
There's a slight connection going back to what I said earlier about the New Caledonia referendum. They've got a franchise which has been agreed. It's called the Noumea Accord. And it's very pertinent to what the boys were talking about, especially with the franchise with another referendum. The Noumea Accord, you have to have lived in New Caledonia in 1998 when they passed this thing by referendum. This was the franchise for referendum for independence. Or you have to have a parent there, or you have to be born there, or you have to prove you've got main interest there for 20 years. So in other words, you've got to prove that you're proper New Caledonian. They've got a word that the locals will use about incomers. They call them the Zogai. So that's the people who've come in recent years. And that's the kind of thing that Alfie talks about. You know, English folk that sell their house down in England, buy one twice the size up in Scotland and live off the rest of the money they've got from the proceeds of that, and how that can slant the franchise. And he thinks it did in 2014. You know, I'm not certain about that, but that's what he thinks, and thinks it's just going to get worse. Now, that leads on to how we get to independence. I am massively behind the Scottish Sovereignty Research Group paper they produced last week, the letter that they sent to the MPs and MSPs, just 9-10 days ago. I think that's absolutely what we should be doing. And it goes back to Craig Murray. Craig Murray wrote about this years ago, about what he called the Kosovo approach to independence, which is you just get all of your legislators in a big room and say, right, we're independent. What the F are you going to do about it? And then look for global recognition. And in our case, what we would do, and the SSRG have said this, if we do this, and we'll have, let's say, a 2-year period of building a new state, and then take it to the people and say, okay, confirm we're doing the right thing, we're on the right track, or do you want to go back to being part of the DIS UK? And that's what we should be doing. And Sturgeon can do that anytime she likes. Now, people will say, as the SSRG have covered, people will say, oh, that's not within the competence of the Scottish. Well, according to whom? You know, we've got the claim of right on our side. We've got, when Cameron brought in this evil thing, which meant that only English MPs, for example, you could never get a Scottish, you can never get an MP with the Scottish constituency being the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom ever again. And we've had, 20 over the past 300 years? That will never happen again because of evil. What they did with that is they set the precedent that only people who are legislators for their own electorate can have decisions. So Sturgeon and Holyrood can say, right, we're walking away from this treaty union. What are you going to do about it?
Andy, I'm in the same opinion. It's like we had David Henry, who is a part of the SSRG, on a previous show. I think maybe 6 or 7 weeks ago. I was reading about that anyway. Absolutely brilliant guest. We were talking about him taking Peter Murrell to court because of the missing £600,000, etc. Great guest, and he told us at that point about the SSRG and to look out for it and what to expect, or he didn't give us all of what to expect. So I've been pleasantly surprised. As you see that letter, the open letter that was sent to all the MPs, I think we're in a place we're chomping at the bit.
Has that got any traction, Peter? Tell me this, because I'm not obviously in Scotland. Has that got any traction in the mainstream media, newspapers in Scotland, that letter? Has anyone picked up on it? No. Seriously, Ruth Wishart?
No. I mean, well, here you go, right? This is what's getting reported, and this is what's getting reported in Scotland. I'll give a quick rundown of the things that I'm seeing getting reported in Scotland. the fact that the army are having to come in and help out the NHS, the fact that the NHS isn't going to meet its target for 2045, now we're in 2021. The fact that Nicola Sturgeon's got time on her side. So these are all the things that are getting reported, right? But behind the scenes, you've got the GRA, you've got Stonewall, the Stonewall effect. Now, I'm not a fan of Stonewall. We've spoken about this in previous shows. Lately, I'm not a fan of them. If you do a bit of digging and Nolan investigates, and but this is a BBC reporter, so they're lucky to be getting a mention on here. They've done well. Nolan Investigates podcast was like a start. But if you look into the likes of Stonewall and the likes of Mermaids, there are a lot of murky dealings going on behind the scenes there, Andy. And the fact that they're a lobby group that seem to have an influence on governments and the departments that feed into governments is very, very worrying for a member of the electorate that's switched on and sees this, that's not getting reported. It's very worrying times here in Scotland.
I know, you may not know this, Stonewall was set up by 2 or 3 guys. I lived in Brighton for many years, and I got to know a guy called Simon Fanshawe, good stand-up comic in the day, blah, blah, blah. And he set up Stonewall with, I think, 1 or 2 other guys. He's now left it and now campaigns against them because he understands. And he's gay man, and he's totally behind, you would expect, rights for trans people, as we all are. But he realises that Stonewall are actually, what they're, amongst many things that Stonewall are doing is they're creating a climate that's anti-gay, anti-lesbian, and it will be finally anti-trans as well, because they'll be kicked back against what they're doing. So they're just a complete toxic shower.
It's absolutely atrocious, Andy. No, that's nice timing, John. Nice timing. We've just came right to the end of that point there. Brilliant. Welcome along, John. I had to explain to the viewers that you had there was something else that you had to attend to, and you would join us whenever you could. So welcome along. I'll just open straight up to you. How are you doing? How's things?
Same old, just dealing with bits of issues. I was quite pleased to see you on Twitter there, this thing, and it's been going on a few days now. People saying Independence 1, 2, 3 and 4 and that, so it's good, a bit of grassroots stuff sort of sprouting away there. I find that very heartening that people are making the effort to do that, and it's trending well as well, so that's good as far as I'm concerned.
What a fucking introduction, mate. What an introduction. Right, we'll hold on the now. John's just going to sort out something out.
Shut the door, sorry, just to shut the door, I didn't want that.
What an introduction, mate. Brilliant. That fits in perfectly, because we'd spoke about earlier, just to give you a rundown of what you've missed, we'd spoke about earlier about independence and Alaba's approach to it, because Andy's going to be running for Alaba International Secretary. And the grassroots thing, it's good that you've mentioned that, because I've been taking part in it on Twitter. I don't know if you've seen it, Andy. As John says, there was, I think, no, forgive me if I get this wrong, I think it may have been Bill Cruikshank that initiated it. If I'm wrong in that, I apologise, whoever it was. But it's a case of, as John says, it's grassroots, everybody's participating. And I was saying to Andy earlier, John, that I see people kind of coming together a wee bit over it, and taking a wee bit of distance that seemed to be between the two factions, kind of shortening that distance, which is good to see, because we need that in this final push. We really do need this in this final push for independence. I wanted to kind of personalise it a wee bit. I'm going to do a wee screen share here. I wanted to personalise it a wee bit because there was something in a sporting kind of a sporting side that happened over the course of the past couple of days, Scottish, that didn't get much recognition. So I'm going to do a wee screen share here. Hold on. That's on this one. This is it's a really kind of a nice story as well. This is why I'm sharing it. This is like, I think it's a father and son duo that have won the same biking championship 25 years apart. Both in the Scottish, obviously. So I'll tell you a wee bit about them in a second once I scroll down through it. Niall Mackenzie and his son Taz Mackenzie won the BSB Championship 25 years ago. So and his son won it yesterday, and that was the 18th of October. So congratulations to Taz who won it. There wasn't much mention of it elsewhere. A wee bit of Scottish sport. So taking that on board, John, we were saying, Andy and I were talking about how the Scotland get viewed in the international scene. And he's like saying that there's no much news. It gets stifled. How can we change that, John?
Well, I think even the people in power need to be challenging it more, because I've said it to you 100 times, Peter, I'll say it to you 100 times again. The SNP are absolutely pathetic at challenging the narrative that's shoved down our throats every day. I mean, they've even had a SNP media account, and I think it was run by somebody with a pay-as-you-go mobile phone. It is absolutely rubbish. So we just get deluged with this utter tripe, totally biased political spin, and there's no feedback from it. There's no return for it, so we just get deluged. And I do think that affects for instance getting in. If more people would speak up and feel empowered, and the people that are in power would empower people to challenge it and fight back with it.
Right. So Andy, hearing that from again, it's kind of it's echoing the message that I'm saying. Scotland, the political scene doesn't go out. You get fed. You're like mushrooms. You're kept in the dark and fed shite, right? Basically, that's how it goes. But we need to be putting ourselves out there. What's the suggestion for yourself, Andy? Is like if you're going to be a successful Alabama International Secretary, what would be something that you would be looking to highlight first of all about Scotland, so that it gets that?
The thing, and this I don't want to get too party political about this. The great thing about the Alba Party is with Alex Salmond to talk about, and love him or loathe him, Alex Salmond is a name with history. Okay, you might not see a lot of that, but I noticed in recent weeks, for example, even the Nine, which I watch on BBC Scotland, I'm one of the 5 guys who watches the Nine every night on the BBC, and they're covering him occasionally now.
Right.
And they went before. When you've got a big beast like that at the top of your party, if you're a news editor, that's the kind of guy you'd put on the front page or the second page or item 5 in your rundown, whatever that is. He's a big name. That's what Colette, for example, didn't have with ISP. There's no big beast. And we've got Kenny as well. We need big beasts because they will get the front page or page 5 or whatever it's going to be. They'll get coverage and that will start to cut through, because it's only with that coverage that people will start to interrogate what you're actually talking about. You need that short window. And that's what Alex Salmond brings to the table. And that's what Nicola should be bringing to the table, but she's not using it the way she should, my opinion.
And just thinking about it, because I don't know if this will carry the wording in France that you used there, will carry much in Scotland here about big beasts. To kind of put that into to emphasise the point that Andy's trying to make is a big, strong name that's no fear to actually put themselves out there. And kind of not a big beast monster type thing, but somebody that's actually strong enough to kind of carry the hopes a movement or a nation or a whatever, a party.
About having a history that people will actually look at you, they'll actually take notes of what you're saying, because you've built up a career, you've built up a profile, you've built up history. And so as much as obviously a lot of people in the mainstream media in Scotland have demonised the guy for a number of years for reasons we know about, he's still got that profile. And that's that's why I was pleased to join the Alba Party, because Alex was there. I mean, you mentioned the earlier on with the ISP, a lot of great ideas, but you need a bulldozer that will get you the front page cover. Someone will ask you down the pub or in the supermarket, oh, do you see what he said or what she said, whatever. If you don't have a known face, that conversation won't happen.
I think that kind of comes across a lot better there. Somebody that will bulldoze their way through. John, what's your take on it, mate?
Yeah, definitely. We definitely need the heavy hitters, and you need your star striker to start really then scoring the goals and get the profile that they needs. But we need people to buy into it as well. And remember, we're always up against the giant beast that is the BBC, the establishment. They've had it their way for hundreds of years, and they see us as a threat. Anybody that represents us as a threat. Anybody that challenges what they do is a threat. So we've got to rise to that and be equal to it and better than them.
Yeah,
I will. I mean, again, that's it, John. It's a case of we know what to expect, and we'd mentioned. I'd said earlier on, I'd try to make a joke about where it came across funny. I know, I don't know, but it seems to be that the 77th Brigade, their route to victory is right, folks. Stick a dress on, stick some lipstick on, fuck off up to Scotland. On you go, agitate, cause some bother, and they'll not take independence. Right? That's just a simplistic view, but no doubt the way. Hold on, that's how fucking easy it is if they introduce this GRA and everything else that goes with it. Here you go and agitate, on you go. You've got free roam with this. What's the bill that they're passing down there and all that they can interfere with Scotland and Wales and their electoral processes and as a matter of national security. It's a way to shite out all the tappies again, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but look at what they're doing as well. Even said in the Telegraph, Dominic Raab says they want to introduce a political mechanism that can override decisions made in the
judges.
High Court. So the High Court can make a decision. Boris can sit number 10. No, that's incorrect. That's now scrubbed. So if that's no jogging into fascism, I don't know what is. If that doesn't get people screaming for the rooftops, where is Britain going? It's a fascist state. That's what they want. Ultimate total control. They want to be your judge, your jury, and your executioner. End of. Ultimate power. It's done before. How did that work out?
It's Goebbels leading to fucking Hitler. This is where we're at. And you've got these dafties, down there that know that they don't know, they're ignorant to what's actually going on because they trust these clowns. They've got a private school.
Yeah, well, they believe the Joe Soaps, the working class that vote for these people, they believe the means justifies the ends. So they don't mind about losing democracy. They think that's all going to be worth it because they've got the butcher's apron in front of them and they've got Boris Johnson or whatever populist leader they dream up next. They believe the means justifies the ends, and that's appalling, and that's fascism. End of.
Aye. You know what? Well, sadly, it's not just down there. If you look at what's happening in Scotland, I mean, I said, I watched, by the way, the tweets that you guys just put out with Nadira earlier on today, and I posted something on Twitter about great programme this. Nadira talks about her time in the totalitarian state. Oh, no, also Kazakhstan, by the way. Because that's the way it's going in Scotland, sadly, as well.
Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan, it was, mate.
Remember Ditlop courts. Hitler didn't start with death camps.
Aye.
That's right.
It's worrying, right? And I know that John has been hinting at a lot of what's happening for a couple of years, John. I mean, you need to give yourself a wee bit of credit as well, mate, into this. Like, with your posters that you've been... posters that you've been putting out for years have been leading to kind of hold on.
Yeah.
Look, this is where we're at.
Yeah, ever since 2014, I thought we're going to be doing the crapper here, guys. It's going to head to a state. They want ultimate, and that's what Brexit's all about. It wasn't about getting sovereignty back. It was about getting power back and how they can abuse it for their own need. How they can abuse the idiots that gave them that power. And what they want us to do, a sustenance herb, nothing but a sustenance herb that they can manipulate, control, and profit from. Nothing more.
So on that then, given that, right, Andy, John's posters are something that, I don't know if you see them, like...
Oh, I've seen plenty of John's posters, of course I have, aye.
So John's posters are absolutely spot on, and I'm going to cut through, and I was planning to do this anyway, John, whether you'd managed to make it on or whether you hadn't. The one that you shared over the past couple of days about... it's about the bastards, the DPRK and the BBC, like North Korea. What was it? North Korea.
Aye, in North Korea, they have to listen to propaganda. In Scotland, they've got to pay for it. The BBC.
Right. So I'm going to cut that poster through it, right, in the edit, right? So I mean, things like that. I noticed them. I noticed them years ago, and like, these are the things that, well, my and other people had alarm bells about certain situations. And this union and how they communicate it to us, and that's what is John and I, we've said that repeatedly now. We set up Tweet Street because we can't rely on the shit that you get on the telly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We see what's getting said on Twitter. We do our own investigative work, which isn't much investigative. We're no journalists or anything like that. We just read shit. We're just boring, right? We just kind of look at stuff and we take it in, and then we go and look at the links that says you might want to check on this. And then we go elsewhere and right, that Kevin Bridges bit where you end up somewhere else looking at Diego Rivera, right? You end up like fucking, I don't know, in Afghanistan or something like that, right? This is how we get to know bits about that you don't get reported. And it ties in as you're saying, Andy, and as Nadir had said previously about totalitarianism. It's a case of it didn't start with like death camps. It was a case. It was a gradual, and we're drifting along to dangerous times, and all it takes is for people to stand up and say, "No, right, we're not accepting it." But it's a case of I'm waiting for them. No, I'll wait till they go, and before you know it, there's nobody left to go. And Andy stays in France, and I mean France have got a great history for being
rebellion.
Rebelling against things. I mean, the guillotine or the guillotine was invented in France for said reasons with politicians. How does the political scene in France, like, how do you think it impacts the rest of the world, Andy, for what you see?
The problem they've got in France is the system they've got for voting for the president means they're almost never going to get a left-wing president because they run off. They eventually end up with two people. They've got to get over 50%. I think that's the number. And they end up with two runoffs. And you always have an extreme right-wing against a kind of right of centre. They've had that for the last 5 or 6 presidentials. And in that situation, you've not got any choice. The left wing always lose out because they stand too many candidates. So that splinters the left vote. But what that means is the president of France is almost always detested by pretty much everybody, left and right, because they're too kind of centrist. Macron would say he's centrist. He's actually more right wing than centrist, but that's up to him. Nobody likes him, but they don't like the alternative, which will be Le Pen.
I will. See that.
Where I live in the southwest, it's very much a socialist little corner of France. So they want the left to do well, but they're fighting amongst themselves. They can't coalesce behind one. For example, the one who's just been announced as the representative of the Socialist Party in the next presidential is Anne Hidalgo, who was the mayor of Paris. Now, she's got no connection with folk down here, and they might not vote for her because she's from Paris. And that kind of factionalism is redolent in French politics. So you end up with a president and the Assembly Nationale that don't represent most of the people, and that's why you get the Gilets jaunes, the yellow vests, and people will go on strike. For example, that's why there's been a lot of kickback on the whole COVID rules, on getting a COVID jag and wearing masks. People in France are generally speaking antithetical to government. Although they like the idea of big states, they're antithetical to government. It's a strange dichotomy thing. But they basically don't like their government, whichever way you slice it.
Now, talking about governments, we can't go without mentioning the sad death of the Conservative MP, Sir David Amess. Very, very sad, regardless of party politics or anything, that somebody goes to their work and dies as a result of it. It's no something that anybody thinks is normal, is right. So I think everybody has to stand up in unity and say kind of decry it. And that goes for Scotland and Scottish MPs. And it kind of struck home alarm bells for me, especially with what one of our MPs in Scotland has gone through. over the course of the past couple of years, and I think, Andy, you might know who I'm talking about here, John. It's Joanna Cherry that I'm talking about. I mean, I'm going to do a wee screen share here. There's a video, and then we'll discuss it a wee bit more, guys. All right, so just give me a wee second. All right.
If I had known in 2014, when I first put myself forward to be an SNP candidate for the 2015 general election, if I had known the level of threats, abuse, and intimidation I would face in politics, I wouldn't have left my job as an advocate and gone into elected politics. Having said that, I don't regret doing it. I think it's a really important job. And I've had to give quite a lot of consideration recently as a result of a series of very unpleasant death threats and rape threats, and two gentlemen being convicted of threats towards me. One, as you say, happened at a constituency surgery. The other one was a threat of sexual violence from a man who had a previous conviction for carrying a knife. And I'm also on the record, according to Amnesty International research, as being the second most abused female MP in the United Kingdom after Diane Abbott. So I've given it some serious consideration, and I've actually thought about leaving politics, not just because of the impact it has on me, because of the impact it has on my staff. People often forget about MP staff, and I have wonderful staff, and it impacts on them, but it also impacts on my girlfriend and on my elderly parents and my sister and my young nephews and my sister's husband and my wider family and friends. But I've decided that I'm going to stay in politics and fight my corner. Because I think when people attack you and bully you and intimidate you and threaten you, it's because they don't like what you're saying and doing. And the best way to deal with that is to keep on what you're saying and doing and not to give in to bullies. But I think in the short term, MPs would probably be well advised to take our surgeries, not just online, back online as we did during the COVID pandemic, but also take surgeries by phone. And not everybody has digital accessibility, but most people can get access to a phone or can be at a phone which their MP can call them on. So what I did during the pandemic was mainly phone surgeries and some Zoom surgeries. Maybe we should be doing that in the meantime while we work out what we're going to do.
Well, did you hear that okay, first of all, lads?
Yeah, most there.
Aye. Right, Andy, I'll come to you first. What's your thoughts, mate, on what you're hearing Joanna saying there? Especially after the situation with Sir David Amess.
Well, that was obviously a massive shock when that happened, and I don't know anything about the fallout about that, but that doesn't really matter. The fact that it happened is all you need to know. It's a horrendous thing. And I've been thinking about this as well, what they do, and I think what she's saying is correct. For at least for the short term, take things online in whatever form, it's phone calls or Zoom meetings, whatever the hell it's going to be. Obviously, we have a parliamentary system in the DIS UK where your MP represents constituents. Not like a top-up thing that you've got in Scotland or in France, for example. It's someone who represents your actual constituents, so you have to have that link with them. So I'm sure the MPs will want to finally get back to face-to-face meetings. But in the meantime, I think she's right. We have to have some separation until we can sort out some kind of, whether you have bouncers at doors, whatever it is you have to have, police, whatever it is you've got to have something like that for MP surgery. I mean, I can remember a few years ago, Hamza Youssef, who I've changed my opinion about a wee bit over recent times, but he had to be protected from Tommy Robinson when he came up to his constituency surgery in Glasgow. And that was potentially dangerous and scary. So we've got to do something to protect these people.
There's no need for that. I mean, the two of them are wankers, to be fair. I mean, Tommy Robinson is a dick, right?
Yep.
And Hamza, no, my opinion is that you're lolling a snake's belly, mate, with your politics. I don't agree with it. John, you've seen on Twitter, or have you seen on Twitter, Kirsty Blackman's response to Joanna Cherry's video, or not necessarily to that video, but to the situation?
I haven't seen a response to it. I knew she was agitating against it for some time now, but I haven't seen any response to it.
I mean, I'm not going to show you the response. I'll maybe cut it through in the edit, actually. I'll maybe cut a poster it through, because it was sickening. Now, the thing for me is, and as much as you've got against I've got against the First Minister currently, I believe she put out a message, condolences to the Sir David Amos's family, etc., after the fact. But then for Kirsty Blackman to then come out with that message to Joanna, it's not only attacking Joanna, it's then rubbishing that message of condolence that the First Minister of Scotland has given to that family. And she shouldn't be in position, right? There's no beating about the bush. She shouldn't be in position. She doesn't represent Scotland. If that's our politics, it doesn't represent the majority of Scotland, and she shouldn't be in her position. No, that's my take on it. John.
Sorry, there's not a bit as what to say. I don't know if you've seen this lady on Twitter. Is it Super Tansgate, I think her name is, on Twitter? And she puts her face up and she does a lot of political regurgitation. I think she's actually a Labour supporter, but
English lady.
But she does a lot of, an English lady, yeah. And she actually done a bit about Sir David Amos, where she quite correctly said it was a tragedy that this poor man had been murdered. It's a tragedy for his family. But somewhere down the line, people like Boris Johnson have to take account for what they've been saying in the past and the lead up to Brexit. They've been guilty of othering people. She used the word othering. And that basically means anybody who wasn't like them is somebody to be as a target. Now she's basically replying to the fact that people getting abused because of their colour or their creed is at record levels because of Brexit, and that's empowered a lot of these racists and haters to do what they've done. And even when Joe Cox was murdered, a lot of the fire was going towards Boris Johnson for what he'd said in the past, racist remarks and stirring it up. And he basically said it was poppycock, it was rubbish. He didn't take any accountability for it. So these people need to be careful what they're saying, because there's too many people take them literally and can't just think they're saying stupid, ignorant things. They believe that empowers them to do things that they shouldn't be doing.
Aye, I mean, I totally back that opinion to the hilt, John. It's a case of there needs to be accountability. It's no nice. Sorry, Andrew.
Am I right in thinking, I could be wrong about this, obviously, am I right in thinking that the boy who murdered Joe Cox, he shouted something like Britain first or something?
Yes.
What's to that effect? Yes, right. I do remember that was said.
It was nationalist. It was a nationalist. It was classed as what was it classed as? Oh, I would need to check. Someone's telling me it was classed as not quite domestic terrorism, but on the road to that, you know. Because they don't want to be seen as having people of their own country creating terrorist situations. I mean, it's appalling. I totally disagree with all acts of terror, and that goes coming from the governments of your country as well, terrorising people unnecessarily with bills and etc. that they pass. And that leads us back to Scotland should have a right to make the decisions for themselves. So let's no fanny about any longer. Let's get the wheels in motion for that to happen. We'd spoke earlier on, Andy and I, John, before he joined, about the SSRG and the letter that they've sent, the open letter that they've sent to all the MPs and to the government. I back that stance that they're making. We hope to get further communication with the SSRG at one point. And coming for the what would you do for your country? Some people would die for their country, so see going to jail for their country, it seems a lot easier. Right, now that's an aside. That's a complete aside. Andy, right, we're kind of coming towards the end of the podcast. So I wanted to get off you what your hopes for Scotland are in the near future. What do you see for France? What do you hope to see, and what's the realistic kind of a view for you?
Well, the next election we've got coming up, obviously, is the regional elections, the council elections the next spring. And even though I'm an Labour Party member and I want us to have some kind of breakthrough there, I think that's a bit of a long shot. So we need to look forward. If we're talking election politics, we need to look forward to the next general election, which might be 2023, or the next Scottish one in 2024, because I'm pretty sure we won't get a referendum before those dates at all. So therefore, the thing that's now got my urgent attention is the SSRG approach. And I think if that starts to get some traction, and maybe if things happen over the coming months, people start to agitate, we get extracurricular activity, people marching, people making their voices heard, some of the mainstream media picks up on it, some of the newspaper titles and things like that, maybe we'll get a head of steam behind the SSRG's approach. And maybe that'll force the pace. Maybe.
Aye.
But who knows?
Well, I mean, we've got the COP coming up, John, and we've got a chance, as Andy said, for the SSRG to be kind of a put into force, not into force, but put to use, and for Scotland to be an independent nation without as much as an argument. It's then a vote a couple of years down the line once Scotland become independent, and I'm all for that. I think the Treaty of the Union has not only been broke, it's been kicked fuckety. It's been kicked fuckety. It's been smashed. I mean, and what's the point of maintaining that with this COP coming up and Scotland having no representation other than hosting it? It's absolutely appalling. I can't see how Scotland and the leader of Scotland is protecting the people of Scotland by maintaining this approach. John?
Yeah, I think it's a big opportunity there, and any avenue that we've got to deliver independence must be explored, because as Andy quite rightly says, it's not looking like happening any other way at the moment unless bloody lightning strikes somewhere, so we have to explore all avenues and progress it as much as possible. And this COP26, my only fear is, hope this doesn't happen, that boatloads of busloads of anarchists come up here and try to make Scotland look bad, and then the media will try and blame that on Scottish independence. There's Scottish independence right in COP26 or whatever. So we need to be on the watch out for that people want to smear us with their own dark intentions. That has to be watched out for.
Well, that's the thing. We could be caught out. We could be caught out with anything at all. Talking about getting caught out with something, I get caught out a wee bit with a wee French translation, and I wanted to kind of mention this because it's.
All right.
It's we had a wee chat, Andy and I, John. We had a wee chat, just like an informal, like, oh, this is what to expect when you come on a podcast, right? And we get talking about snails, right? Now, there's an hell of a difference. There's an hell of a difference between a snail and snails. Isn't that right, Andy? Explain it to us.
Can't mind that. Glenoi?
Aye, well, no, you were telling us that, what's it called? Escargot versus...
Yeah.
L'escargot is singular and escargot is... You tell us that, mate. That was how I built that, the hell of a difference. Like, if you are... And you need to try them to become a French national. Is that correct, Andy?
Yeah. Yes. Aye.
Right, tell us a story about it then.
All right. Well, a year or two ago, I was having a lunch down here with a good French friend of mine who's actually an MP up in Paris, and he obviously after Brexit vote was saying, "Look, I don't want to be British anymore. I want to be French. I can't be Scottish officially. We didn't vote that way in 2014, but I'd rather be French." So he said, "Okay, stand up and tell them all why you want to be French." So I did my piece, and he went around the table, asked for votes, and they all voted in favour, right? Then he went to the next table with three mates of mine, good mates of mine with their wives having lunch, and they went through the same procedure, and they all voted against me. Bastards, right? The next day was market day. I was coming back for the market, and rather than getting a kebab or a fish and chips like you would get in Scotland, there was a guy selling snails, escargot. So I bought a little bucket of snails, took them home and started eating them. I took a picture of me eating one and sent it to one of these three guys who voted against me the day before, and two of them, and they both came back straight with, "Okay, you're French national now. We'd vote for you now." That's what you need to do about it.
Right,
Since 1905, after 1905, because some edict by Toom Tabard with 1295, Toom Tabard, by the way, who's got no... people don't think he did anything good for Scotland. At least he signed the Old Alliance in 1295.
Well, I suppose...
We've got someone just now who's at the head of Scottish administration who I think is even more of a Toom Tabard than he was. Anyway, if you're born in Scotland up until 1905, automatically you got French nationality.
Wow.
There's some debate about whether that's been rescinded or not. I read a thing the other day, an English student wrote a doctorate about this, and she thinks it's not been rescinded. So it could be, but no one's got the balls to do it yet.
On one of my I can't sleep nights where you end up reading all sorts of information. I'm sure I read something about that Andy, that led me to believe that it's open and still intact.
Yes.
So aye, it
Well,
should be exhausted.
Maybe the First Minister, go back to what you said a minute ago, maybe the First Minister will surprise us all at the COP summit. And what she'll say is she'll bring all the MPs and MSPs into a big room and say, right, we're declaring Scotland as an independent state now. Can you imagine? Maybe she's read what Roddy McLeod wrote in his podcast, in his weblog the other day. Maybe she'll grasp that nettle, and you can imagine the publicity worldwide. I mean, France, everywhere, they'd all be right behind us, especially when we see that we're not being represented at the summit that we are hosting. That's bizarre. So maybe I think actually will grasp the thistle.
I think Andy, if that happened, the COP would stand for cunt suit partying for the full month. We're independent, yeah. Oh, I can't lift me up. We're independent, yes.
Can you just imagine what the British would do in response?
Oh,
what can they do? What can they do?
Well, that's it. They can have accepted of paratroopers over Glasgow. See how that turns out.
Aye, they ran away from Afghanistan, leaving most of their Americans hanging. I mean, what can they do? They're already useless. Right, no, I can't go without, because we're almost right at the end, lads, right? But I can't go without kind of getting a couple of wee French like hangs in, like frog's legs and things like that. Have you tried frog's legs, Andy?
I have, yes.
And are they good, bad, or different?
Well, all of these disgusting things they eat in France, they taste of garlic and olive oil and parsley, because they cover these things in what they call persillade. It's a sauce, so it's snails, frogs' legs. They eat all sorts of bits. They eat animals' intestines. They eat all sorts of disgusting things, but they all taste the same thing, which is this garlic parsley sauce thing.
Right,
and they deliberately cover up the crap you're eating.
And no, because some Scottish people aren't well travelled. Are there many people jumping about with black and white jumpers and rings of onion round about their neck?
Not down here. No, but what they do wear down here, which is very, very, very Frenchy, is berets.
Right.
Berets.
I wear berets. I've got a few berets I wear occasionally. Sometimes with a beret with a kilt just to confuse people. With my under my arm.
Aye, well,
so,
right.
Quite like that.
And on that note, and on that thought, John, you want to say thanks and goodbye because we're kind of finishing up.
Yeah, it was a good session today. Thanks for joining us, Andy. Much appreciated. And hope to see you again soon.
Andy, thank you very much for Tweet Street for joining us. Good luck in your run to become Alba International Secretary. We wish you the best. A couple of wee messages to put out. So we need to try and kind of get Alex Salmon, because we're banking on Alex Salmon for our Christmas special, and I've kind of build it. Like, hold on. So this could be my bah humbug moment. If we don't get him, then I'm going to have to kind of do something like an alternative. So give us a shout. Alec will work with you. And we'll do a wee show and put it out for the people of Scotland, who I think would really appreciate it. So for Tweet Street, for JB Whitesnake, for Big Andy McColl, it's goodbye for us for now, and we hope to speak to you before Christmas. If not, have a nice Christmas and a nice New Year. All right? Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye now.
Thanks, Andy.
This is Tweet Street Satirical Soulfire, broadcasting to you for unoccupied Scotland. Amplifying women's voices and saying women won't waste. This is Tweet Street Satirical Soulfire, broadcasting to you for unoccupied Scotland. Amplifying women's voices and saying women won't waste.